In a school in want of top-level resources, what shall principals and teachers do to cultivate top-notch students? This might be a question asked by many. The next two speakers, principals in the UK, happen to be pondering and acting on the same question. Happily for us, their quest has paid off. They will give a report on curriculum assessment and evaluation. Please welcome Simon Eliott and Mr. Shofiquez Zaman.
Hello, my name is Simon Eliott. I'm CEO of the Community Schools Trust. Today I'm going to talk to you about curriculum assessment and evaluation, how we do things within our trust to get amazing outcomes for our children. A little bit about our context. We're 3 schools, and for a significant number of our children, they face quite severe deprivation, so they don't have access to the resources that children would do elsewhere in the United Kingdom. So we've got to overcome that, but we don't let that be a limiting factor. We've got a very diverse student background, over 50 languages are spoken, and the majority of our students would say that English is a second language for them. So we've got to work very, very hard and make sure that our expectations are really, really high so that children achieve really, really well. But we've got very motivated students in our school. We've worked hard to create a culture of strong discipline, and our children come in wanting to learn. Our families support us in that, and it's something that we're very, very proud of. Now, we've got a very, very committed leadership team. So if you want to improve standards, you must have a strong, committed and engaged leadership group, a group of people who are prepared to go forward and drive the changes that you want. If you do that, you can achieve amazing things. Lastly, we get life-changing outcomes for students. So across 8 subjects, our students achieve on average 1 grade higher than they would anywhere else in the United Kingdom. And in England, if you get 8 grades higher across 8 subjects, over your lifetime, that translates to £200,000 of extra income, and that gives you loads of associated life chances. You have a better quality of life, and you even live longer. So we're creating outstanding opportunities and with outstanding outcomes for our children. So a little bit about our history. We began with 1 school, which was Forest Gate Community School, and we expanded from there. Forest Gate has been in the top 50 schools in the United Kingdom for the last 4 years. So now I'm going to tell you how we improved and get into some of the nuts and bolts about what we did. So the first thing I'll mention is standards and expectations are absolutely crucial. We mustn't let a child's background be a limiting factor. In our trust, what we did was we started out by saying, right, what would a really successful child do in the best school in the country? What would we expect them to achieve by the time they leave our school when they reach 16? And we worked backwards from that expectation, setting them little goals along the way. We did a lot around leadership development, which I mentioned earlier, but also we've done a lot around team development. So we break down what each individual team needs to do within the broader vision or strategy, and then we train that team and give them the tools necessary to bring around student improvement and school improvement. So these tools we call systems and controls. So a system might be, for example, that I will track how many times each teacher starts their lesson well, and I'll look across all my schools, see how that's doing, and look to make small incremental improvements with the cooperation of my wider team so that each teacher gets better. We did focus very, very much on curriculum improvement, and I'm going to talk about that on my next slide. So to us, curriculum improvement means what is being taught, so the subjects, the content, how it's being taught, We spent a lot of time on the delivery, how a teacher will actually impart that knowledge and check for understanding. When something is being taught, and that's about how you sequence a lesson to get things in the right order, go back and reteach them and test whether the children have understood it. And lastly, the overall picture of assessment, which takes place during a lesson, at the end of a lesson, to a degree at the start of the lesson, and then on more formal assessments. So first of all, we looked at what is being taught. We looked at the English curriculum, and we went back and we looked at the key knowledge and skills that each child would need to have when they got to 16. And we looked at that from the point of view of them making outstanding progress. We then worked backwards from that and put each child into one of 6 pathways. So pathway A, B, C and D, based on their ability. A pathway X for our very, very talented, most able students. And a pathway S for children that come to us with different needs and need a very, very personalised curriculum. We then mapped what each child had to do for the 5 years that they're with us. And then we came up with this system called our Dynamic Progress Reporting System, our DPR system, which is an online system whereby teachers log a child's progress, children log in to see how well they're doing, access work, and parents can also log in to see how well their children are doing. The next thing we did was looked at how things were being taught. So we introduced a lesson framework. This is based on the principles of explicit direct instruction. So within that, we've broken down what we need to teach, how we need to teach it, and we put a lot of training in place across the year repeatedly so teachers get better faster. We use instructional coaching, so we will go in and coach teachers in the minute, not after the lesson, at the time, to give them pointers so that they can get better. We introduced a teacher playbook, which is a set of instructions for teachers so that they can go away with their mentor if they have to practice something afterwards and look at high frequency errors, and there's little instructions in there as to how to make it better. And overall, throughout the whole of our trust, for all of our schools, we've got very clear expectations about what good teaching means. Behind me is a picture of our playbook, and the next thing I'm going to talk about is how we assess. So we do regular in-class assessment. So we use a range of techniques which, if you're in education, should be or will be quite familiar, like cold calling, whereby we will check for understanding. This is embedded throughout our teacher training. We've got real-time feedback on the students' learning using our aforementioned DPR system. So in a lesson, a teacher will upload this information and they'll assess on a sort of red, amber, green whether that child has got what they need to get and whether they need to put in extra work and extra learning. Where a student falls behind, we use our DPR system to give them extra classes after school, which we call intervention classes. We've also we will personalise our curriculum where we feel that a child isn't meeting the expectations, and we'll work with their parents and that child to give them extra work and extra support to help them get through it. Now I'm going to give you, we're going to pause and I'm going to pass over to my colleague Shofiquez, who's going to talk you through some of the details of this before we finish.
Thank you, Simon. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we have maintained a real learning focus, because I think often one of the biggest challenges we face as school leaders, right, is in everyday setting, there's so many things that gets thrown to us. And in the last 2 years is a good example, actually. Externally, the whole COVID situation, how did schools go about teaching their curriculum during lockdown is a good question to ask. So we get busy doing a lot of things, and we sometimes forget that actually the main thing to focus and continue to focus on would be teaching and learning. In 2015, there was an opportunity for us to rethink how we redefine our curriculum, how we access learning. So we moved away from assessing students by using levels and grades, if you like, and we've really defined how we're going to assess students by using a formative assessment. So Simon mentioned earlier about how we have identified our key learning objectives from year 7 to year 11 for all our subjects. And that's been made very, very clear to all our students, and most importantly, not just to our students, but to the teachers and to the parents. So it's an attempt for us to involve every stakeholders in these learning that we say that is very, very important for our students to engage with. And it's also an attempt for us to emphasize the importance of creating independent learners. Just to give you an example, so during the lockdown, because we set up a system that made learning transparent and had a real focus in learning, when lockdown came about, we as a school, as a trust, we actually acted very quickly, and we did a number of things to maintain that focus. Because our curriculum was transparent and was accessible, and it was online, our teachers and students continued to interact with our planned curriculum. And I know that was an issue for many schools. So I suppose we were lucky, if you can say that we were well prepared for lockdown, and our students interacted with our original curriculum intent. And that was helpful because it made learning meaningful, significant during the lockdown, where many were engaging with some ad hoc learning, if you like. So the independent learners, how do we focus in, how do we support our students to be independent learners? So our system allows the students to have access not just with the learning intent, but also resources that they engage with to help themselves. So for example, they will know what they need to learn for the whole year. So we encourage our students, don't actually wait for teachers to introduce a topic to you, or don't wait for something to be given to you during a lesson. There's nothing stopping you from learning independently by looking at what is coming up next term or a term after that. And we involve our parents in this process as well. In the parents' evening, for example, we talk about the learning. We don't talk about behavior necessarily. We don't talk about the peripherals. We don't get distracted by any of this. We really focus on the learning because, as Simon mentioned earlier on, it is very clear to the parents what they need to learn. And during the parents' evening, we say, right, this is the report. However, you have access to our system and you can check the progress anytime. So although at this point in time, the report says that your child is not doing well in this area, in this key learning objective, but doing very, very well in this key learning objective, next week all that could change because we assess this learning very, very regularly in class and out of class. So please do log into our system and see how they're doing. Our students are able to collaborate, receive feedback on areas that need to improve in. So it's a real-time collaboration against the expectation that we have set for them. So this is our attempt to, if you like, kickstart this whole effort to create our students to be independent in their learning and to take charge of their learning. So for me then, just to summarize, we worked extremely hard on improving the quality of the curriculum. All schools have a curriculum, okay? But we've asked ourselves, how do we improve that? Okay, and based on research, as you can see on the slide here, we believe a quality curriculum will have the following hallmark. First of all, it will be knowledge rich. So we worked on defining what that is. It will be appropriate to students' phases. So from year 7 to year 11, how does it look like? You know, what does learning look like when students are in year 8, year 9, year 10, year 11? We actually grouped our students according to pathways, and pathways are simply it's a differentiated sort of approach to our curriculum where our students are expected to get, for example, grade 7 to 9, they belong to pathway A, and for those who are targeting to get grade 1 to 2, they belong to pathway D. And we define learning accordingly. And finally, the way we execute the curriculum is based on research that works. So Simon mentioned explicit direct instruction. We know from we know from the EEF research, that is the Education Endowment Foundation, talks about feedback being a major contributor to having impact on students' progress. So we did a lot of work around feedback and enhancing feedback in lesson, whether it's the written feedback we provide, verbal feedback, or feedback through our system, the DPR. So the first gear here, what we call the driver gear, this is the thing that drives everything, and this is our curriculum. This is our quality curriculum, very clearly defined curriculum intent and the key objectives. And this allows our students to engage with learning and allows the challenge of the learning taking place in everyday classroom setting. That drives then the second gear, okay? And the second gear is our pedagogy, okay? So we have resources, our curriculum booklet, we have the lesson framework Simon referred to earlier on, and we have our dynamic process reporting, which makes our curriculum transparent to everybody. The outer gear, if you like, within the middle gear, if you like, is our training. We do a lot of training, okay? Our training helps our teachers execute the curriculum really, really well in the classroom. And again, Simon talked about a lot of those earlier on. Of course, the first gear and the second gear drives the final gear. And the final gear, if we do the first thing right and the second thing right, it's taken care of, and that is the outcome. Now, I'll pass you over to my colleague who will then talk to you about evaluation.
Okay, so I'm going to finish up just with a couple of slides, and the first slide I'm going to talk about is how we evaluate our work in Community Schools Trust. So we look at a lot of data across a range of things, and it's not just outcome data for how the students are doing, although we do look at regular checkpoints throughout the year, how the children are succeeding, and we use our DPR system to look at how they're doing on a weekly basis, and we analyse that. But we look at other data from other schools to see how they're doing, and we also we get around a lot to see what other schools are doing, to see if there's anything that we can use that's innovative, particularly if it's based on evidence. And that leads me on to challenge. So we believe very, very strongly that we're not the finished article, and that there are lots of schools and, in fact, talented teachers out there that are doing things really well. So it's really key for us to find out what other people are doing to make a difference in children's lives. So in our trust, we're constantly comparing ourselves to others, and we're very critical of our own progress. So when we're comparing, it's not just educational outcomes that we're looking at, it's whether we're keeping our children safe properly, and as my colleague mentioned, whether during the pandemic we were serving them the right way, giving them good online lessons and taking some of that burden off parents. Lastly, we're on a constant mission to improve. So one of the reasons why we're going to enjoy the conference today is to see what other people are doing around the globe, actually, to see if there's any ideas that we can use to make our school a better place. So the last slide from me is it's our trust strapline, if you like, which is focused, informed and passionate. So we're focused on each child's path to excellence, and that means that we set a really high bar. Our leaders have those high expectations, and we set a pathway for each child which we track and monitor along the way, and we really focus down onto what they have to do to improve, and there's lots of data that helps us back that up. We're informed by the latest educational research. We look at what others are doing. When that's backed up by research evidence, we will use that to make things better in the classroom. And lastly, we're really passionate about what we do. That comes from the top down. We really believe that if you get the right people on board, the right motivation across the trust from your leaders, right the way down to the students, if everybody's on board, you can do amazing things. Thank you for listening.
Thank you， 谢谢。接下来，让我们再回到欧洲去看法国。让我们欢迎波尔多大学比较与国际教育学教授瑞吉斯·马来先生。他将从国际视野下的教师教育 和校内合作学习两个视角来探讨重新定义学习。Now, let's turn our eyes back to Europe, to France, to see how the University of Bordeaux redefines learning through the lenses of teacher education and cooperative learning in the school place from an international perspective. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Régis Malet. Welcome.
Dear colleagues and friends, good day from the University of Bordeaux in France. First, I wish to express my gratitude to the Global K-12 Education Research Association and to the Shijiazhuang Foreign Language Education Group for their invitation to the 6th Annual K-12 GERA Conference. I take this opportunity to say that France, the University of Bordeaux Institute of Education, our research center on education, cultures, and societies, and our partner schools will be most honored and pleased to take part in this most important global network of comparison and research on global basic education. The annual conference theme is redefining learning. This is a most important topic and probably an urgent one. I will approach it through the lenses of teacher education and cooperative learning in the school place. As a matter of fact, successive crisis contexts, whether they concern security or health, contributed in various settings somehow to a collective awareness of the importance of education and the transmission of values of justice and equity in the construction of societies that are both more inclusive and more enlightened about the major challenges of our time. Education is called upon to promote interpersonal skills, respect, tolerance, openness, as well as subject knowledge and skills analysis, critical thinking, cooperation, participation, inclusion, all of which contribute to the formation of citizens who are enlightened, responsible, and active in society. In such a context, most policies worldwide emphasize the need to equip teachers to work effectively in a highly diverse classroom context, supporting pupils with different cultural backgrounds and learning needs, and promoting an ethos of inclusion in schools. For new teachers, this implies developing the skills needed to work from an interdisciplinary perspective, to the ability to extract themselves from a cellular and solitary conception of practice, as well as to develop a strong capacity for embracing the complexity of reality and of mobilizing knowledge in a collaborative and creative dynamic. I invite us today to give attention to discuss a keystone in school development, school improvement, and teachers' learning, namely cooperation and team building in schools, and how this can make a difference in education and learning in the school place at every step of the school curriculum. Notably, the focus on the collective dimension of professional development, expertise, and well-being of teachers, as well as students, at different stages of their career, has been pointed out as a crucial element for school improvement. In such a conception of teaching, the school place is called to be the very place of learning, of professional learning, and the group of peers to become cooperators of this learning, the educators somehow. One of the effects of this promotion of the cooperative dimension of teaching is to go beyond a classic top-down conception of teachers' education based on transmissive methods, conferences, seminars, and, on contrary, to promote participatory and peer-to-peer approaches of teaching through mentoring, counseling, sharing, and mapping scenarios of teaching through lesson studies groups, for instance. Actually, in practice, and for a long time, peer-to-peer education, tutoring, and mentoring by experienced teachers have been practiced in many countries such as UK, Finland, Canada, China, of course, some of provinces more than others probably, Korea or Japan. And these played a major role in the professional development of teachers. Teacher careers are now regulated in some countries, such as Singapore, for instance, on the basis of annual teacher assessments, not only with regard to their teaching quality, but also to their effective contribution to collective engagement and work within their schools and out of it, notably through cooperation with the diversity of actors in the educational community, parents in the first place. Yet, this approach of cooperative conception of teaching and schooling is only possible if, and I want to stress this, if it is coordinated and supported by an adequate leadership, which opens up to more participatory governance of school development, to which each and everyone will be able to contribute. Such a participative conception of school governance calls to a more and more integrated and participative leadership. Investing on school as the place of reference for teachers' development ultimately offers a new lever and resource in order to increase the overall performance of the organization and, at the end of the day, to enhance students' achievement and well-being. But what exactly are the main virtues of such a shift to a more cooperative, participative conception of teaching and learning? Whatever words and techniques are used, the purpose of forming more or less stable and flexible groups is to prevent isolation, of course, but also to forge professional pedagogical ties between school members. It is about building up cohesive working communities, educative communities in an activity which is traditionally characterized by its isolated dimension with the traditional ecology of the classroom. Major positive virtues, effects have been identified in a number of research studies conducted in Canada, UK, the Netherlands, Finland, Chile, the USA, South Africa, and of course, France and China. These various studies, including ours, have underlined the beneficial effects of cooperative learning in schools, both on the teaching practices, but also on the students' performances. They would have positive impact on the school climate, social and professional relationships within schools. Indeed, this promotes concerted and shared conceptions and visions by teachers of their pedagogical action and strengthens the motivation and individual and collective effectiveness of teachers. Furthermore, the international research on the topic promotes the research-based dimension of professional learning as decisive, as a poster of research in the sense of production, reflective capitalization and dissemination of professional experiences and practices have a positive effect on identification, socialization, recognition, and professional affirmation. And this goes with the mobilization of energy and resources within institutions themselves, within the schools. Again, research literature shows that in certain countries such as Finland or Japan or Canada, the organization of teachers' working time takes into account this collaborative and research dimension. Such arrangements for the school organization of time are also being implemented in Canada currently. And again, a high degree of support from a school leadership for these actions is a decisive factor in their effectiveness. The question of the organization of school time, but also of school space, is essential, as are the methods of collaboration, of cooperation and partnership within the whole community of users and partners in schools. Research have shown very clearly that because of their strategic position in the systems, school leaders are able to intervene positively or negatively, in other words, to promote or inhibit the development of training dynamics and initiatives, collaborative work and professionalization, more than any other actors of the school community. This is the reason why I want to stress this aspect. Overall, and to conclude, research has shown the positive effects of promoting the professional learning paradigm, and through the recognition of the dynamic of collegial learning within the schools, within learning communities, on different aspects of school life, which go with a better achievement of schools and students. This would promote the well-being of staff and students in the school and gives less exposure of teachers to the phenomena of professional isolation, burnout, and stress. Second, the motivation of education staff and students within the framework of cooperative and collegial learning schemes, like through peer-to-peer apprenticeship, increases the performance of the schools. Schools engaged in such schemes would be more efficient in terms of their students' result, school climate, and staff retention in employment. Yet, what are the most notable obstacles to effective cooperation in school? School-based education has the virtue of thinking teacher professional learning as close as possible to the teacher's needs in educational settings, but at the same time, depending on the link with research-oriented action, some difficulty may rise, linked to the possible development of a culture of local self-sufficiency, local rooted and removing somehow from a more global consideration on teachers' expertise. It is also not so certain that these good practices identified as relevant produce the desired spin-off beyond the school where they were initiated. The question, the very important question of their transferability arises sharply quite often through a process which can lead to enclose the expertise to one context and one only. In such cases, indeed, this is not exactly a process of professional learning. And this is the reason why school-based education has to be continuously relied to a research-oriented education. So the main driving forces behind the success and the positive aspects of cooperation in learning are first, defining a vision, common values and goals. Second, continuously assessing and regulating the effect of the actions carried out. Third, distributing roles and responsibilities as clearly as possible in a process of responsabilization and deprivatization of teaching. Fourth, supporting initiative and innovation and promoting a supportive school leadership. This is very important. And finally, making overall of the well-being of the teaching staff, the teachers, the leaders, and of course the students a priority. Because this well-being of the professional will extend and will shine beyond themselves to the students. And that is the key and the objective of it all. School climate and improvement are one of the keystones of successful teachers, schools, and students. Thank you very much again, so much for your invitation and for your attention. I wish you a wonderful and fruitful conference.
Thank you, Mr. Malet. 谢谢法国的马来教授。接下来，让我们欢迎我们今天下午最后一位发言者，欢迎美国华盛顿国际教育委员会主席威廉·费什先生。费什先生是我们室外的老朋友，他将和我们探讨中国国际留学的情况。他指出，中国提高了国际教育的水平，在政策制定方面有了战略重点的支持。中国正在迅速成为海外留学的新高地。Now, let's welcome the last speaker of this afternoon, Mr. William Fish, an old friend of Shijiazhuang Foreign Language School. He is the president of Washington International Education Council from the United States. He will talk about international education in China. Over the last decade, China has elevated the level of international education policymaking, which has been supported by strategic priorities. China is on the fast track to becoming a top destination for studying abroad. Welcome, Mr. Fish.
Hello, this is Bill Fish from the Washington International Education Council. I'd like to take a few minutes to talk to you about the rapid growth of China as a leading destination for international students. China has become one of the leading host countries for international students in the world. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has curtailed the movement of international students, but we fully expect China will resume its path to becoming one of the top destinations for international students in the second half of 2022. China has elevated the level of international education policymaking over the past decade, and this has been supported by strategic priorities. Chinese universities have expanded their global participation and market influence. These universities have also responded to the community reaction to a growing number of international students. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, China was on a fast track to becoming a top destination for studying abroad. 492,185 international students from 196 countries studied in China by 2018. Students were enrolled in 1,004 higher education institutions located throughout the country. In 2009, there were 238,184 international students in China, and in 1978, there were only 1,236 international students. Between 2007 and 2009, the Chinese Ministry of Higher Education had signaled against the pursuit of international student enrollments at the expense of quality education. The Study in China initiative appeared in 2010 in the National Outline for Mid- and Long-Term Education Planning and Development. In 2010, state policymaking endorsed increasing international student enrollments in China. Study in China was to be built into a global education brand. The plan specified annual enrollment targets with an objective of 500,000 international students in 2020. The plan included 150,000 degree-seeking students, and yearly targets were set to develop exemplary sites, programs, and courses for international education. The overall objective was to make China the largest study abroad destination in Asia by the end of the decade, and this was achieved in 2017-2018. Policies then focused on legal, financial, and administrative improvements for international education. Funding was made available through national and local government and corporate scholarships and stipends for international students. International students in China are beneficiaries of funding from China. This is completely different from the policy in the United States, where only a smaller percentage of international students are recipients of financial support from the government. The Chinese policy to support international students makes international education available to students who otherwise would not be able to benefit from everything international education offers. The mid-2010s defined the orientation of international education in China. The Study in China initiative was subsumed under the new global strategy, the Belt and Road Initiative, which is a roadmap for China's higher education to be a major player on the world stage. In the official 2019 Study in China Guide, international education is noted for providing essential knowledge about China. The guide provides information about Chinese market aspirations and appeal to international students. The Chinese government's Silk Road Scholarship Program provides sponsorship to 10,000 new international students each year from countries participating in the Belt and Road Initiative. Universities can apply for state funding to run a Belt and Road talent development site for large cohorts of international students. Research grants fund studies that improve the quality of international education while supporting Belt and Road work in infrastructure, trade, culture, and diplomacy. The Belt and Road Initiative is central to China's rapid shift from being a major importer to becoming one of the largest exporters of international education. In 2017, 317,200 international students came from Belt and Road Initiative countries, 64.85% of the total. Quality improvements have continued and substantial progress has been made since 2017. The 2017 administrative measures for the enrollment and development of international students by universities and schools emphasize systematic quality enhancement in 4 areas: development of relevant university regulations, rigorous assessments for admissions and scholarships, systematic planning of teaching and staff development, developments of quality control mechanisms. In 2018, quality assurance standards for the higher education of international students were the first of its kind in China. In 2019, quality accreditation rules for international higher education created China's first external qualification, accreditation, and assurance system for international education. One quality indicator is the composition of international students. Degree-seeking students became the majority, 52.44% of international students in China for the first time in 2018. The number of degree-seeking students increased by more than 350% from 36,387 in 2006 278,271 in 2018. This includes bachelor's, master's, and doctoral students who study abroad for at least 1 year. While Chinese universities have benefited from the influence of the Study in China initiative, they must respond to multiple, often competing pressures. English is the dominant language in the academic world and in global trade, and most international students in Chinese universities study in English-taught programs. There is pressure to integrate international students into the regular operations of Chinese universities. The rise in international student numbers has created a need to increase managerial efficiency. This shift is also a response to community perception. International students benefit from more flexible testing arrangements and greater access to elite universities and scholarships compared to domestic students. International students are spared the tough competition with the Gaokao, the National College Entrance Examination. In addition, breaches of rules and regulations by international students have often gone unaddressed. Chinese universities are having to weigh competing considerations of state aspirations, market appeal, corporate consolidation, professional enhancement, and community pressures. We applaud the growth of international student enrollments in China, and especially the funding for those students. We all benefit when people are able to learn about other countries and cultures. The benefits are increasingly important in our interconnected world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fish. 谢谢 Fish 先生。尊敬的各位专家、教育界的同仁们以及关心教育的朋友们，感谢各位一整天的倾听关注。明天上午，来自古巴、美国、日本、德国、意大利的6位教育界专家、校长和教师将会继续为我们带来6场以重新定义学习为主题的精彩报告，敬请关注。谢谢大家，今天的报告到此结束。